the first slide I'm putting up now is the play activity added information slide. And you add this now into your play activity that you have undertaken or you are undertaking. Now, the first item on top is discuss appropriate dress for the activity. That would involve if you were taking them outdoors and they had to put on wellies and coats and hats, that you would either help the children dress or you would ask one of your co-workers to assist the children. But it is important also that you would dress appropriately for the activity. If they're putting on wellies, you put on wellies. If they're putting on coats, you put on coats. The same with the inside. If they are doing a painting and make sure they're wearing their aprons. If it's a water activity, that they're also covered with aprons. And same with Play-Doh. Make sure that you have plenty Play-Doh for everybody to go around and that the Play-Doh has been stored properly. And if it's a case of you are making fresh Play-Doh, that is thrown away at the end of the session. And for the Play-Doh as well, put it on aprons. Now, the attention to hygiene, that would be very important, and you would want to mention the COVID-19 here and the excessive washing of hands, and that before you left for any activity, the children all washed their hands, and when they came back in, all hands were washed again, including your own. Equipment and materials, and we spoke about that the last time. Make sure you have plenty equipment and plenty materials, that you're not going off in the middle of it looking for it. So it's your job as the leading person in this activity to make sure all the equipment materials are there. You will also write on your activity plan about the environment where the activity took place. If it was outdoors and an outdoor activity, where was it? What part of the outdoors was it? Was it safe? Was there, you went on a nature walk, was there puddles? Did they splash in the puddles? If it was something indoors and you were doing something indoors, where inside in the room did you do it? Did you do it in a quiet corner? Did you have to do it in the centre of the room because there was a large group? You write down about what the environment looked like. And you will also say that you had asked your supervisor beforehand about a suitable time to undertake this activity and a suitable place to do it, and that there was an agreement on that. Now, you must remember, you are leading the activity. You delegate, which means you ask your co-workers to help. You give clear instructions. And then there is informal and informal communication. So you can, informal is when you're just having a chat and you're telling them, I'm thinking about doing this on Wednesday. Is that okay with you? A formal communication, if it's a very, very large centre, and you will be looking for certain equipment that other sections of the childcare facility might be using. You might put a note up on a notice board, or you might send a message via WhatsApp saying that you will be doing such an activity on such a date in such a place. And if it's outdoor and it's in a playground or something, that you would need the playground between 11 and 11:15 or whatever you decide. So that would be the communication issue. Now, the responsibilities under the regulations that would relate basically to ratio. Make sure that at no time is one adult left with less than 11 children. Reporting before and after, logging for future reference. That would be, you would discuss beforehand what you're going to do and write up on it afterwards, how it went. And the logging for future reference would be so that in future, another staff member, or if you again were going to undertake that activity, that you would be able to look back on it, see what worked and didn't work. Now, some centres like to tell parents ahead of time what they're planning to do and what their plan for the week is. Now, you might ask your manager, could you actually contact the parents and use whatever method of communication your centre used to communicate with parents. And then afterwards, writing up on the task, that now would be the same as reporting before and after, but you could also use the writing up on the task as an entry for your journal. It's the entry for your journal or your entries for this assignment. It could also be your journal in the childcare setting where they log what they did for the month. And it can also be used as observations for individual children. So letting parents know how the activity went. If again, afterwards, the policy of the childcare setting is to let the parents know how the previous week went, you might actually do that and do it by whatever method they communicate again. Now, a lot of centres like to attach photographs. I do when I'm communicating with the parents at the end of the week on a WhatsApp group, and I always attach photographs. But I have permission from every single parent there to do that. So you check that you have permission to do that before you start doing it. And just one reminder, when you have your activity done and completed, and you're not going to look back on it anymore, make sure your supervisor signs it, that they sign that you did undertake this activity. And that's very important. So don't forget it, because if you do, I'll be handing your assignment back to you. And that now is outside the permission slip to undertake activities that I spoke about the first week, that I want you to attach to the very front of your assignment. The manager or the supervisor giving you permission to undertake any activities necessary in relation to your work experience module. Okay, I'll go to the next slide now, ladies, in a minute. Now, the next slide is the letter of application. Now, this is how to apply for a job. Now, actually, this is hardly ever done, as you all know. Most of it is now done online, but it's something we have to do, and I have to do it with you. So the usual thing, you include your name, address, your telephone number, your postcode, as Lynn suggested, and I forgot to omit. Make sure you date the letter, and you put down the name of the addressee, the name of where you're sending it to. We said the manager of Macedon Montessori, or the manager of Clonara, or the manager of Family Resource Centre, or wherever you want to address it. Now, you can, if you know, use the manager's name and address it to Mrs. Murphy, manager, Mrs. Mary Murphy, manager of Macedon Montessori, Macroom. Make sure that you do have the name of the manager right. Make sure you do have the address right, and make sure you spell it properly. So, and then if you do know the manager and you're addressing the manager, you can, dear Ms. Murphy, or in some, I suppose I should say Mr. Murphy, because that may be in some centres. You will say what you're applying for. I'm applying for the position of, let it be room leader, let it be an SNA, whatever you're applying for, and say where you saw it advertised and mention the date. I'm applying for the position of room leader as advertised on the Lee Valley Outlook, or wherever you saw it, on the 1st of October 2020. Then you will just say a few things. At the moment, I'm employed in such and such a place, and I now want to advance in my career, but the position for advancement is not available in the centre I'm in now. And for that reason, I would like to change. And you speak about your years of experience. You will say that you're familiar with the work of the centre that you're going to, because it shows that you've done your research on the centre and you're familiar with the duties involved in the position advertised. And you say you're enclosing your CV and you're available for interview at their convenience. And sign the letter. Sign it in your handwriting, and you can type your name underneath. Always ever sign the letters. Okay, that's that one, ladies. So the next one now is contract of employment. So the contract of employment is to be written like you would write an essay, with headings. So you can start off by saying it's contract and the law is the first. Unless you are or were married, you cannot enter a legal binding contract until you're 18. And that is true. Nobody can enter a contract at 18 unless they have been married or are married or have been married. Now, there are exceptions. One is an apprenticeship, because apprenticeships usually can take place at 16 years of age. A lot of young people go into apprenticeships then, but it would be for the purpose of an apprenticeship. Sometimes there are contracts drawn up with young people under 18 and indeed over 18, where it's a contract for necessities. Necessities usually include contracts for if you are being supplied food, clothing and lodging, or items like books or uniforms. There can be a contract about that, and the same applies to apprenticeships. So you get all that information on the Citizens website. So in a centre, the manager is responsible for the running of the centre, and that includes dealing with the staff. So for every time a new employee starts working in a centre, there has to be 2 copies of a contract, one to be signed by the employee and one to be signed by the manager. And there has to be 2 copies, that is it. And both signatures have to be on the copy, otherwise it's not a legal document. Now, the date, there must be a date on the contract, and it should cover areas like the position, what your role is. Your role as a childcare assistant, a room leader, an SNA. The job description, what is the job description? Your date of commencement, what day you are commencing work. Now, the contract may be signed a few days before commencing work, but the date of commencement would be the day you first start. The duration of the contract, they can be on probation, which means that that the contract should draw up is only for a period of time while someone is on probation. If they're not kept on after probation, that's the end of the contract. If they are being retained, a new contract has to be drawn up. Then there is full-time contract or full-time permanent contract. That's for someone who's hired on a permanent basis. And the fixed-term contract is, I have underneath here, an employment contract that ends on a specific date or on completion of a particular task or project. Now, for an awful lot of preschools, we close for the summer. So our contract with our employees would be for the first day we're back, let's say the 1st of September, or the 28th of August, or whenever. And the contract ends on the whatever day in June we close. And that is the end of that. And a new contract then is drawn up for the following year. So that's a fixed term contract. On the contract, you will put in wages. You'll have to tell them what wages they're getting, but you must also state the wages are so much an hour or so much a week. You must list duties and obligations, what they are supposed to do and what they're obliged to do. Now, if you don't put something like that into a contract and an employee comes along and they're asked to do something and they go, well, no, I'm not doing it. It's not my contract. If it's not in their contract, then you can make them do it, and that's simply it. Not that you should ever be making anybody do anything. A huge thing in contracts is confidentiality. And most businesses, and particularly schools and childcare, have confidentiality clauses that employees sign. If you have had one of those confidentiality clauses, you can include it into your project. Now, another important aspect is the termination provisions. Why would a contract be terminated? There must be a reason for the termination. Or then what happens before the contract is terminated? How many verbal warnings? You'll be given a verbal warning. If a hunting is, you'll be given a written warning. After that, then you have a meeting, and if there is no improvement, then you are going to be, your contract will be terminated and you'll be left go. Then hours of work, it must state in a contract you are working from 9 to 4. Or it could also say, and there may be times when you would be needed to start earlier and maybe finish later. And that's put in. Place of employment, you say where your place of employment is. Your place of employment is in Masseytown, Macroom, or in Clondrohid, or in the Fairfield, Masseytown, or in Clodove, or wherever you're working, Kilmurray, Tripsey, anywhere, Ballincollig. And that is your place of employment. But there may be times when your place of employment will be other than the regular place. And that would involve going on sports days or going on school tours. And you would put that in. Timekeeping, that has been the contract, how vital it is for timekeeping. And if an employee is to be late for any occasion, they would be requested to ring in saying they're running late. Absences as well. are very important to be covered. If you're absent, you must notify the employer if it's something that happens suddenly that morning before a certain time. If you want to be away from your job for a day or 2 days or whatever, it has to be discussed first by the manager. And that's what absence. Look, I have it covered here. Prior notification of absences must be discussed with manager. How time is paid back if time off is taken. That would be an agreement at the time. Do you want to pay it back by working off the hours you've taken, by staying on an extra hour for so many days? Do you want it to be taken out of your holiday pay, or do you want to be deducted from your weekly wage? Now, absence because of sickness, most employers have in their contract with their employees, we would like you to contact me before 7:30 in the morning so that cover can be got for you for the day. If you know you're going to be out the following day, we would request that you would contact us by 3:30 on the previous evening again, so we can get cover. And I have a note put in there saying that sick pay is not mandatory. It's not a requirement by law. So absence due to force majeure. You can look up force majeure, ladies, and Google it. Force majeure is an unforeseen circumstance. Like the time of Ophelia, that time when the preschools had to close and all schools had to be closed, but we talk particularly about preschools. To get paid, we had to sign a form saying we were requesting payment because it was force majeure. It could not be foreseen. And that can happen as well with, we'll say, if you had to take a length of time off work because something happened to a member of their family and it was unforeseen, there's a form you fill out and you give it to your manager. Absent due to death in the family. I was saying it to the ladies the last night, for those that were missing, is there is nothing in law that says that you have to be given time off for death in family. It's not in the law. But there is obviously an agreement between unions and human beings, really, that if there's a death in the family, of course, you'll get time off. But there are stipulations that you can only have such amount of time off. Now, if it's a partner, it's probably longer. If it's a parent, it's so many days. If it's a child, it's longer than a parent. But you can look that up and you can write a line or two on it. Medical appointments should be made outside working hours if at all possible. The only time that people have to be allowed to attend medical appointments is if they're pregnant. Now, layoff and reduce hours can also go into a contract saying that your hours may be reduced for a number of reasons. If there is a drop in attendance at and a drop in numbers at the childcare facilities, in the case of an SNA, if the child you are assigned to either leaves the school or it's decided that his hours are cut or whatever, that will be in your contract. Now, pay. You must tell them, you can go back to wages then, and you could put this under wages if you wanted to. You could state to employee if they're being paid weekly, quarterly or monthly. And then how are they going to be paid? Are they going to get cash with a wage slip, or will it be paid into their bank account? You must also state what deductions will be placed on the wages. There will be income tax deductions, PRSI, universal social charge, local property tax. Now, that's not a requirement by law, but it might be that the employee might request that they pay their local property by deducting so much weekly from their wages, and that's done then by whoever does the wages in the business. Maintenance payments. Maintenance payments are also payments that one partner would have to pay another partner, generally for children. And pay slips must always be included in the wages. Every employee by law has to get a wage slip. Now, there might also be in contracts conflict of interest. That would happen in the case of a second employment. If you're working for one childcare centre in the morning or one school in the morning as an SNA, and then you were going to another centre in the afternoon, another school in the afternoon as SNA, there's a conflict of interest there, which means you do not take any information from one centre, one school to another. Now, you can certainly take ideas that worked or didn't work. Like we tried this and it worked really well. And, we might try it here. That's fine, because that's all positive. But anything whatsoever to do with the running of a business should never be taken to another business. And that would be written into a contract. Now, your presentation for work would be if there is a uniform supplied, that you wear a uniform daily. Now, with COVID-19, there is a requirement that we all have a second, no, it's not a requirement really, but it's advisable, and TUSLA inspectors, when they come in, ask about it, that we have a second uniform on site. Now, I don't request my employees to have a second uniform. I request to have a second change of clothing. That is if a child gets sick and has to be put in the isolation room for someone to collect them, and they have got sick on top of you, then you need to get out of those clothes quickly and get into other clothes. And that's what that's about. Health and safety, always read the health and safety statement. There might be something like you should wear shoes, not sandals while at work. That's to protect you. Your nails shouldn't be long. They should be kept short. Earrings, long dangly earrings, not to be worn. Face piercings. Some centres don't allow face piercings. They have to take them out. Other centres, I don't mind face piercings as long as they're not hoops or rings or bars, because not that I have any objection to them, but it is just children will pull at them. Tattoos. If a person has a tattoo, you can't do a whole pile about it, but some centres would ask them to cover the tattoo. For me, it would depend on what the tattoo was. Smoking and vaping, that will be in a contract. You will not smoke or vape on the premises at any time. Some people say even at their break, you go off the premises, and I've only, like I said to the ladies last time, I've only one case where someone actually was a smoker and they just have to go outside the back gate off-site completely to smoke while they during their break. Now, as well as that, in the contract will be use of IT equipment. Personal mobile phones are not to be used for anything other than an emergency. No texting, and no phone calls, nothing. Only in an emergency can you make one. Car parking, if there is a car park available, a lot of centres and schools may well have a clause saying they're not responsible for any damage that may happen to your car. Staff training, that would be that the manager requests you at all times to undertake and keep up to date your training. And that would be very particularly important for the FAR first aid course and manual handling, and other courses that are necessary to the running, safe running of a facility. Professional conduct behaviour, that was how you would behave in front of other staff members and in front of the children. That would be no bad language in front of, well, either, I suppose, but in front of the children in particular, and how you behave in front of them. So policies and procedures are to be read and followed, and make yourself familiar with them. That would be in a contract. An important part of contract and work would be harassment in the workplace. Bullying, how bullying is frowned upon in all workplaces, and bullying will be dealt with by the instigator, and the victim would be helped. And comments on social media, any comments about a setting or a business or whatever are not to be kept, are not to be mentioned on social media, and should never be, really, because you're only going to walk yourself into trouble. Discrimination in the workplace will not be tolerated, and that will be covering the 9 areas of discrimination later on, and that's what you can mention, that, you know, the discrimination in the workplace will not be tolerated, and the 9 areas of discrimination you will make yourself familiar with and abide by the law, because it is the law. Grievance procedure, each service has their own policy and procedure on grievance. That would be if an employee has a problem, and well, everyone has a thing. If you're a childcare assistant, you may talk to your room leader. If you're an SNA, talk to your teacher. If you get no satisfaction there, you may well have to go to the manager and see can the grievance be sorted. Discipline procedure, robust policy should be in place and followed accurately. The law in relation to discipline in the workplace should be explored prior to drawing up the policy. So it's very important before any manager or principal or board of management, really, board of managements would be now, as you know, in the schools and in the community-run childcare settings, and then they would always look very carefully at the law, The same with the private settings like myself. Before any disciplinary procedure is, you would look up the law and say what you're entitled to do and what you're not entitled to do. It might be good advice actually get a solicitor to look over it. So GDPR, I have this highlighted in red on your slide because not because I want to colour, it is so important. I cannot express how important the GDPR are, because you can land your company in and your setting and your business that you're working for into huge trouble by breaking the law, and it cost them tens of thousands. So this policy, the GDPR policy, should be read in detail by a newly recruited employee. And if you are reading it, you don't understand it, then go and ask. Employees in the setting for some time should read through it regularly to keep ourselves familiar with it. It is an extremely important document. So is data protection. That also is an important legal document. Be familiar with the policy, should be on display in a public area. Now, you have to be really careful with things like phone numbers, all this rigmarole of, we have to keep things separately and things under lock and key and the governance and everything. That came from those two policies, the GDPR and the data protection policy. So we'll say in the data privacy policy, in the contract, you may well be asked to sign 3 areas. In my contract with my employees, I have 3 separate areas. When you are handing up your assignment and your essay on this, you can do it. You actually can do it exactly as I've it here. 3 areas to sign under the contract, under data privacy was 1. The employee is giving the manager permission for collection and usage of your personal data. That would be your name, your address, your date of birth, your PPS number, any other, your qualifications, all that personal data. Sorry, no, that should be data, not date. Consent for collection and usage of sensitive data. That is, you are giving the manager permission to collect and use sensitive data. That would be any medical information that you have imparted to the manager. Now, that may be necessary. It may be necessary for the manager to know that, particularly if you're going to be taking time off to attend doctor's appointments and things. And it's important that they do know that, and they have a right to know that. Now, they don't have a right to know if it's only an appointment kind of once a year. You might say, look, you have an ongoing medical condition that requires an appointment once a year, but I'll give you a notice well in advance of that. That'll do that. But sometimes if it is a case that you're having to go somewhere for every 2 months for some sort of treatment, you're going to be out for a few hours, or you're going to be out for a day, the manager of any setting or the principal of any school has a right to know that, and they will hold that information and they will keep it in confidence under lock and key. Now, also as an employee signing up, the employees have to know that their employer has told them that they can withdraw their consent for any of the above at any time. So they can, if you're 6 months in, you go and you say, look, I don't want you now to hold you all the information you need now. I'm withdrawing all my permission. You have sent off my PPS number to the Revenue Commissioners, and that's all you want to know. And you have my name and address now, and take all the other information back. Now, the personal data shouldn't matter a whole pile. But you have a right to withdraw that. You have a right to withdraw your medical, particularly supposing things improve health-wise and you're not attending as often as possible. You go and you say, look, you don't need that medical information anymore to be on file here. I know I'm withdrawing it. So you probably have to sign some sort of a leave, and then you have a right to withdraw it. So that's what the data privacy is about. So other areas of data privacy that the employer may seek from an employee would be the use of mobile phone numbers to enter in a WhatsApp group to send text to employees. So rather than sending 5, 6, 7, 27 texts to 27 different employees, put them in a WhatsApp group and just send them one text and they all get it, but you must get permission to do that. And the email address for the same reason. You might want to send the email, so rather than send them to everybody individually, you send a group email so all can get it, and it saves time. And that's the end of that slide. So that is the contract of employment gone. Now, the next thing we're coming up to is actually work experience contract. Now, this is something you're going to have to do yourself. You're going to have to design yourself. You've got the information from the previous slide. Now this is the work experience contract between you and the employer. Now you're going to draw this up, ladies, and you're going to take it into your room leader or your class teacher or your manager, and you're going to get them to sign it. So this is a way you can do it, but you can do it whatever way you want to do it. And you might have one already that you will use as a template. Do not include the contract you have at the moment. That is personal to you. It's personal to wherever you're working, and you giving me that would be breach of GDPR for you to give it and for me to read it. So let's not land ourselves in any trouble. So we are going to look at the work experience contract. Now you certainly can get information from what you have already. You can take ideas out of your contract already. So the contract arrangement is between wherever you are working. We'll say Macedon Montessori or Clownara, childcare or family resource centre or wherever you are working, the name, whatever you are working, and the place where it is, Macroom, Clondar, wherever, and your name, whatever your name is. And like I said before, the date of the contract. That is not a contract until it's signed by two people and dated. You will head it like that. These now you can start off. This contract relates to, and you list these. You can add more of them. You can take some out of it. The role. Now we'll continue with this later. The role. What is the role? Your role. You are in as a student, so that is your role for the work experience. You might be working there. You could be working there for 10 years, and now you are. But while you're doing this, you're a student. So you will list these, and I want you to list them. Role, date of commencement, duration of contract, working hours, duties and obligations, confidentiality, accidents, incidents. Now, you don't have to put this in if you are all working. Wages. If you are undertaking this course while working, you will continue to get your wages. So they're not going to stop your wages for 120 hours. So there's no need for you to put anything about wages in. Now, if you want to add something to it, you can, but there isn't any need. Uniform, mobile phones, absences, and being familiar with policy and procedures of the service and school. More or less exactly what we covered in the previous one. Now we're going to break it down. The role, your contract agreement would be, so you head something role and you put a student undertaking advanced childcare QQI6. That's the role. The date of commencement for all of you will be the 1st of October 2020. You cannot put anything other than the 1st of October 2020 because we didn't start the course until the 30th of September. If you put down the 28th of August 2020, you're wrong because the course didn't start, and that is simply just the 1st of October 2020. The duration of your agreement is for 120 hours because that's what you have to do. It's 120 hours plus 30 hours tutoring. Now, we're not doing 30 hours tutoring this time, but look, it's still 120 hours, so look, that's the way it is. Working hours, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. So whatever your working hours are, they mightn't be 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. there, whatever they are in your setting, and then or your school, and then you will say with a break for lunch for 30 minutes between 12 and 12:30, and maybe a coffee break in the morning between 10:50 and 11 a.m. Duties and obligations, you'll perform all duties assigned to you by your supervisor or by your class teacher, and be familiar with all aspects of health and safety. That are your duties and obligations. Confidentiality. Information relating to children, parents and staff is considered confidential and is not to be disclosed to third parties during or after the period of placement. Now that's very important, and it isn't just placement. It's when you leave a setting and you go work somewhere else and you've left them, you still do not talk about what went on that because you signed a confidentiality agreement. You never take out information about the children, the parents or staff. Discuss it anywhere else and take it with you even when you leave to another setting, or you don't talk about it in the pub, or you don't talk about it anywhere. So the minute you go out the door, you'll forget about anything that happened with children, parents and staff. Now, there is nothing to say that you can't say, oh, we had a great day in school today. One of the little boys, who never mention names, something like that, made the most wonderful butterfly we ever saw. And oh, he was so excited, because people like to hear that sort of thing. And do not mention names, and always be positive. Never mentioned about the little boy that absolute went around and clattered everyone and you spend 10 days or 10 minutes chasing around the room. You don't mention anything like that. So it's always positive or not at all. And no names. Breaches of the above will terminate your placement with this service or school. So if you breach your confidentiality thing, that's you out the door, gone. So try not to do it. Now, you will also say accidents and incidents must be reported immediately to your supervisor. And yes, you must do that. So that's all you need to say there. Accident incidents, I will report immediately to my supervisor. Uniform, whatever the uniform is in your setting, I will wear the uniform as assigned to me by the setting. If you're in a school, you can call that a dress code. I will dress appropriately while I'm at work. And that will, for the SNA, is obviously not going to be running around in stilettos and long loop earrings and the whole lot, so you will dress accordingly. Mobile phone. The mobile phone will not be used for either call or texting except at break time or in an emergency. And then for absences, I will always contact the supervisor in relation to any absences. And if I am unable to attend at very short notice, I will let the teacher or the supervisor know by 7:30 on the morning that I'm going to be out. You can put something like that. This is between you and wherever you are in your work experience. Your policies and procedure, you will say, before I start, I will make myself familiar with the policies of the centre and the school, especially safety statement, child safeguarding policy, a document child protection policy, and you better add in there as well the GDPR and data protection policy. So add those two in there. I should have had them in, but add them in now. GDPR and data protection. And then when you have that done and you've written up your contract, you will say, well, make a piece out, and if you are satisfied with the terms and conditions, please sign and date. So you are asking now the room leader to sign and date it if they are happy with the terms and contracts that you have drawn up. So finish it with a statement. I accept the agreement drawn up for me as an advanced childcare student, accept the terms and conditions set out. And you sign it and the supervisor signs it, and that's it. All right, that's your work experience contract. So we're going now to